I'm Burjama, and I'm super excited for our session at Tech.eu today because we have a fascinating topic and an incredible group of panelists with me here today to explore that topic. Yana Abramova, founder and general partner at Partisium VC. Ali Servet Eyüboğlu, founder of AI Tech Builders and Global Scale Ventures, building and scaling AI through a venture builder model. And Maximilian Wilhelm, who's the investor at LeftLane, focusing on consumer and SMB software. So let's dive right in. So when we look into AI today, the giants seem to have everything: data, compute, distribution. And yet, we're seeing early stage startups move faster than ever, building, launching, iterating in weeks and even hours. So our question for today is, how will startups actually be able to win in an area where giants can actually dominate? And I would love to start with you, Yana, on where you see for early stage startups right now, compared to the giants that are out there, some of the advantages that they have.
The early stage startups.
The early stage startups.
Well, definitely let's start with that. I think right now the main part is like when you operate in regulated industries. So for example, healthcare, government, or financial services. Definitely would say that being in an early stage company, you can compete with incumbents because sometimes incumbents can't do things because they can cannibalize themselves. So for example, a bank can build an AI underwriting because they already have like a book of loans. But then a startup can compete with that. And I think with the current speed of technology and development, you can basically build a product in 6 weeks instead of like 18 months as before. And so this is definitely something that I'm seeing on the market.
That's amazing. And I'll actually connect that to, Ali, from your standpoint, merging into what Yana was saying. You guys are actually at the heart of helping startups and building and scaling. Where do you see the biggest advantages compared to the giants right now?
Yes, I think...
Or do you see any? That's the other thing.
Exactly. I think they don't win because they're faster anymore, because everyone is fast right now. As all of us know that we were always feeling really comfortable when we were building our startups back in time. And we were always thinking that we are super fast and we can disrupt traditional businesses and companies. But now it's not like that. I think founders win when they go deep and focus on specific verticals, because we have been living in really tough times. We can see that really big enterprise companies, they build AI teams internally, and they are building horizontal AI applications. But as a startup founder, I think it's always better to focus on a specific vertical and trying to implement some solutions based on some unique data sets. I think these things are increasing the entry barrier for startup founders nowadays.
And it's great that you mentioned pace is not the only differentiator anymore. I think we're going to be talking about that even more throughout this panel, which I'll tie back to Max for you, because you have been very close to especially consumer platforms and SMBs in that area. If pace is not the only differentiation anymore, where do you see the edge? And is that a new edge compared to what we've seen in the last couple of years?
I think we've seen two things working very well. One is these companies fishing in ponds where unit economics in the past have not been very viable or have been there, and now you have a chance to massively improve them. Let's say, for example, looking at the whole wave of AI roll-ups or service firm roll-ups for SMBs. In the past, it was already profitable to serve SMBs from a tax and accounting perspective, but now you can actually internalize, automate a lot of processes where giants have massive teams being dependent on billable hour models, while now, let's take a company we invest in, Zinco AI in Madrid, is able to serve SMB clients in Spain at a 60% margin compared to a 20% margin for like a KPMG or PwC. They do it at a larger scale, but they did not focus on SMBs. On the consumer side, it's much more being able to focus on actual scalable personalization, if that makes sense. Looking into health or like insurances you add on top. Really being able to provide that screen in a digital way, for example, working on blood samples in an AI-fueled way rather than having to go through a physicist's office, having the consultation face-to-face, and then again being limited on personal hours versus really trying to digitize as much as possible of that journey. That's how we see kind of consumer startups at the moment outperform existing, for example, insurance premium providers.
Which goes back to a little bit of the vertical depth as well.
Exactly.
I guess connecting it back. And Jana, going back to you, especially with the early stage startups, we're in a moment, especially in the last couple of months, where prototypes are being built in minutes, right? Not even in months anymore. When you look into that ecosystem, how do you define what are the core traits that are actually going to make those startups matter in a couple of years from now when you're seeing all these prototypes coming up in just minutes in front of you?
Oh, definitely. For example, I'm investing very early. Right now, it's even coming to pre-seed instead of seed. And so, and I love to say, I'm not underwriting the company, I'm underwriting the founder. And specifically underwriting the founder mental model of the world. And I think when it comes to the mode in the future, the only mode that you can have in the future will be your vision and the way you build a company in a way. So then you need to have like earned knowledge or earned interest about a specific problem. We're not talking about solution, we're talking about the problem because of, again, the product will change, go-to-market will change, but if you focus about like how and you've been obsessed with the problem that you are solving, then you will be able to build more and more capabilities around that. And again, for example, talking about incumbents, some of them they're very slow. So once you have this more like competitive, vision, and then you're going to get more, let's say, data, specific data about the specific industry, and then it will, and then if you have a specific vision about how you leverage this data and build products on top of each other.
So I'll actually go back to Max related to the same question, because especially with the consumer products and platforms, it's even becoming harder to understand. There are a lot of different products that are going to be out there that the consumers will test and try, but some of them will stick and some of them won't. So what are the core traits that you're looking for outside of the founder's characteristics and vision?
Two things that come to mind is one is integrating in existing workflows. I think this applies to consumers as the same as SMB, because in the end, the user in SMB software startup is in the end also a consumer, and they want to kind of keep their habits. I think we see a lot of busy work going on, like you can have 8 agents running and you can one-shot products and it looks amazing, but in the end, often you maybe feel like you understood what the customer wants, you feel like you know what a lawyer is working or how they're working like. In the end, they're working completely different. So I think this is one of the core things we're looking out for, like, do the founders actually spend time with their customers in the office? Do they jump into a car? Because the building part is probably not the hard part anymore. And then on the consumer side, it's very simple. At left lane, half of the companies we actually back are in one way or the other putting money back into consumer pockets. So I think in a time where the wow effect with AI solutions vanishes after a day because a new model drops and like your benchmark was here, now it's there, you wake up the next morning, it doesn't feel novel anymore. So you really want to invest and build stuff where consumers either make or save money. This can be in various kind of ways, like if you're a restaurant owner and you need visuals for your new menu, whatever, instead of going to a designer, or for like a seasonal product you wanna launch, you do it yourself through a company, for example, like Kittle, it's a browser-based AI tool we invested in, or property tax reduction. It's simple as that, right? Like a company we invested in Texas, Ownwell, they help you every year to reduce your property taxes by a couple of $1,000. There's no reason for you to turn away from that. They build an extremely good data moat because they know the neighborhood. They can work with the government through various APIs. Of course, also already AI fueled, that like communication is not pen and paper anymore, but automated. And I think this is something where you shouldn't be a one-trick pony, or like you're not making a circus stand. You kind of want to bring a value, and the value in the end comes down to money. And that's what we see working the best for consumer startups at the moment.
I love that. And it's usually in panels like this, we always talk about the core traits that we're looking at, the signals, to your point, the know-how that they bring to understand their needs and customers, right? But I'm going to make it a little bit more flip the coin when we're switched to Öyle. what do you think is the number one mistake with all the founders that you see and come across are currently making, something that they're overhyping that might not matter in the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think when I look at the startups that we have invested in global scale ventures, they don't really select a specific segment for their businesses.
Okay.
I think this new era requires you to focus on your go-to-market strategy, and you need to find the right product market fit, because I'm always thinking that it's not about MVP anymore. We're not looking for minimum viable product. I think we're looking for minimum viable traction. So, and that traction is coming from the right customer segment. For example, we have invested in several early stage startups. Both of them, they're working on revenue ops, let's say RevOps. They're both trying to increase the profitability. But one of them, they're trying to do this for restaurants only, and they're focusing on that space. The other one is trying to do that for FMCG companies. And a new one I met, they're trying to do that for banks. So I think this is super important nowadays. You need to find the right product market fit for your solution. And the other thing is, you shouldn't, I think about your technology so much, because models are always improving, right? And because if you think that you have a great technology, after 6 months, you will see a better one. And I think it's all about trying to generate early cash and trying to find relevant companies to do your POCs and trying to fine-tune your solution day by day. That's the critical thing.
I love the fact that you said this is not going to be just about the technology that they use, but it's going to be about, one, the vertical, focusing on which vertical to go to. But that ties perfectly to my next question for all three of you, actually. What do you think, especially for the point that the technology is not going to be the only thing that they're going to be able to differentiate on, what do you think the giants are not going to be able to catch up that the startups can right now? And we can start with Jana.
Well, coming back to the first question, I think the important part is like that startups are much bolder, so that they can take more risk, and then they can disrupt some regulated industries because of they are already AI native. When it comes to, as well, they don't really have a legal incentive, sorry, not legal, more the like legacy incentive about that incumbents might have. So that's why that might be easier to disrupt, and so they can get even more clients on board. I will say that.
Max, what about you?
I think early stage startups are much bolder in a way that like they tend to be much more open as a platform and try to integrate and play along with various other solutions. Like consumer, I think the best example is like a Strava, where like you can plug in any other kind of wearable device or even other kind of fitness tracking apps into one platform. While if you look at a Salesforce, completely different side, they woke up now and have like also, I say, a cross-platform open API. You can interact with Slack. This wasn't there 3-4 months ago, and it feels much more natural for early stage startups to work on proprietary data sets and kind of still have that kind of, accruing data over lifetimes, in property tax reduction, in personal health. Basically, if I know you for a long time, I keep that data more to myself, but I'm stacking values and solutions on top, where we've seen big players trying to be overly protective and trying to build like a fortress rather than like a open playground.
Really, what about you? Is there anything that you want to add to that?
When we say giants, if we are talking about like Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and Google, for example, I think their priorities are totally different. And early stage startups, I think they don't need to worry about those giants, because we saw a lot of examples before as well. For example, I was an angel investor in a company which Amazon acquired, actually.
Okay.
It was a very simple tool that Redshift developers were using while they were coding, right?
Okay.
And I'm giving this example because I think Giants has a totally different operations, and it's not really easy for them to like focus on specific verticals and little problems. So Amazon acquired that company, and that wasn't just a software tool, and they added into their ecosystem, and Redshift developers are using it under Amazon right now. But in this new era, I think, for example, let's say e-commerce. E-commerce will change, obviously, right? We see that AI is changing e-commerce. But when you look at Google and when you look at Meta and Amazon, they're working on standards. They're trying to control their own territory and domain. But there are a lot of opportunities for startups out there for e-commerce in AI era. But I think they don't need to worry about, like, okay, Google will launch a product and it will beat Amazon's marketplace. That's not the case, I think.
So the playing field is a little different.
Totally different. I think, again, like we should always think about real problems, real workflows, and real value and real solutions, which is going to hopefully find a new product market fit in a specific area.
And my last question to all three of you is, now that we talked about the traits that we would look for, signals, potential advantages, if you had no capital today, no network, but if you're a founder that's building an AI, what topic or theme would you have focused on?
As a serial entrepreneur and previous founder, I can say that I would try to find like a big company, a big brand, enterprise brand, who owns a unique data set. This can be a hospital, I don't know, this can be a bank, but I will go and try to build something with them, with their data. So
Okay.
can be a smart move for a founder, maybe.
Max, what about you?
Honestly, I think the biggest opportunity I would focus on at the moment is outside of AI and actually real-world experiences. I think we see a lot of kind of people looking for experiences, little luxuries outside of software. And I think consumer is really, really back on the map, not only as a digital or software tool, but like food experiences, sports, whatsoever. I think that's where new models are popping up left and right. And I think there's a lot of interesting business model innovation going on. So I probably wouldn't build an AI. I hope this is not kind of
No, that's actually a relief to hear, to be honest with you.
to the question, but I would try to find a product I really love and build a brand out of it, probably. Yeah.
That's definitely a relief to hear that there's something that is still very much only consumer focused. What about you?
Oh, I might be very, well, I think in the current age, so you either need to build something which is related to distribution or data flywheel, or I mean, I also obviously like about your what you mentioned about more like physical experience rather than like online experiences topic. I would also say, actually I forgot what I wanted to say. So more like it's about distribution and data, but also, frankly speaking, like if AI can make us smarter, because right now AI making us productive, but I think we are already productive enough, so how then we can leverage AI just to make us smarter? And by the way, you really don't need anyone to succeed. You can actually build a company just on your own, and there are plenty of examples when founders build a company 1 billion plus, and they're solo founders, so this is the beauty of the current environment.
So finding ways to empower yourself using AI as a thinking partner rather than letting it be and letting it go. That's amazing. So thank you so much for all of you. We didn't just give insights to the audience, but with the last question, you also gave some ideas, potentially, to our audience here. Thank you so much for all the insights, and thank you so much for our audience for listening to us today. It's always a pleasure to be on Tech.eu stage for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.